G'day, Bomber fans. Player ratings after a win. You just love to see it. I haven't done this before. It's new territory for me. I don't have to roast the boys. I don't know what to do. Last week there were about 100 scores of less than 5. This week there's going to be a lot less. It's going to be a positive review for once. So let's go. It's going to be fun. Starting with Andy McGrath. So this is where I feel like stats can fail you a bit. You look at his stats, 9 disposals, you would say he wasn't involved. But he was actually playing pretty tightly on Willie Rioli when he was playing inside 50 Rioli, because he was splitting his time between midfield and forward a bit. But when he was inside 50, it was pretty rare to see him not with McGrath, breathing down his neck. And Andy's always been really good at this. I don't think anyone's ever argued that. He's always been someone who can lock down and nullify a player's impact. And Rioli is a player who at his best can have a say on a game. He kicked 3 last week. He had a good game against us last year from memory. This time round, he was kept to just 1 behind. He only had 2 touches inside 50. He got a fair bit of the ball, but I think that was mostly when he was pushed higher up the ground, when Andy wasn't with him. I thought this was a really solid game. It was a solid role-player game from McGrath. And he has a few of these every season, because, you can have those games where he's just that very proactive defender, or very efficient defender when he needs to lock down. He's done this on much better players before too. Rowley's probably one of his lesser scalps. And the thing is, he's had a decent game because no one's talking about him online. So that's the way I see it. So I'm giving him a 6. It wasn't near his best. He's had much better games than this. But I thought he did more good than bad this game. I feel like you can kind of tell that's the case because he's not getting talked about much. Sam Draper, I'm going to give... this is where it gets tricky, because do I give Draper a 6 the same as McGrath? Yeah, I'll give... okay, we'll start with the 6 for now. So, I thought he was really reliable up forward. He was kind of playing primarily as that key forward marking target. He barely rucked. He only 30 ruck contests and 10 hitouts. So he was real. This is probably the most time we've seen him spend up forward, most of his career. And also, by the way, he actually spent the entire match on the field, which is really rare for a player in a position so demanding, because there's so many big contests in the air, and they take their toll playing like that. The only other player to spend the whole game on the ground for us is McKay, but he kind of does that every week. Draper, not having a rest is something that's pretty rare. I feel like we don't see that as much. He was working his ass off, which is good. And he was often, bringing the ball down in good areas and taking out players in the process. Kane Farrell, poor Kane Farrell, because he was getting absolutely squashed by Draper. I think it happened 2 or 3 times. And Draper has the week off, but Farrell has to get back next week after those big body knocks. And also, Draper was just kicking goals, and that is exactly what you want to see from Drapes. We need him to step up and be our target without Stringer and Wright and Langford in that forward line, and he's definitely doing that. He's currently leading our goal-kicking tally for the year, I think. The around-the-body technique is working. I thought he still had an odd moment or two in him, which is always the case. There was one, like an entry from just outside our 50, and it was one of the worst things I saw all game. It was really bad. But that's classic Draper. Again, 90% really solid and reliable, 10% wacky. I think a 6 is fair. Jye Caldwell, same as Draper. I feel like not same as Draper, but I feel like he was just solid. Like, he's reliable. He was that anchor in the midfield this week. He spent most of the time in the centre bounces for the team, the most in the team, more than Bryan, who pretty much rucked out the whole game too. He primarily kind of sat himself between the arcs. I was looking at his heat map, and only 1 disposal inside either 50, forward or back. So he was really doing his work around, tight spaces in contests, when the ball was transitioning as that link on the wing. And some of the things he did hemmed up close on the boundary line were really nice. There were a few really clever kicks, that got us more time as that outlet, but it was kicks that you couldn't really see him picking off. He was just seeing the game in a different speed, I think, at times, to some of those Port defenders. I think that was late in the game where he was just kind of owning that wing for a bit. And also he was just really hard at it, which is, really what you need against a team this physical. And Port were clearly quite behind in contested possessions, and Jye Caldwell was one of the reasons for that. So I'll give him a 7. Yeah, I think a 7's fair. I thought it was a pretty underrated game. Zach Merrett, yeah, honestly, maybe I'm trying to think of games where I've seen him go by foot worse than that. Maybe, it might have been the worst game we've seen him go by foot in a long time. He was at 40% by foot, which is just not great because he was kicking it so much. So that wasn't ideal, but also, I mean, you can't really question his effort and the work he does around the contest. And like, it is just inspirational. You can feel like the lift when he has one of those chase down tackles. Yeah, the things he does are really important, like the little moments he has. So even when he isn't using the ball well by foot or at his best, he's still having a real say on the game. Yeah, he was another, I thought, below his best, but you know, I think this is probably the poorest of his 3 games so far, but that really means nothing because the other 2 he was arguably our best in. So yeah, I still thought he was really good against Port. I'm giving him a 7. He racked up the footy, he was hard at the contest, but yeah, to give him an 8, he probably just needs to be at his usual self by foot, which he wasn't. But there's nothing wrong with that. He was really good. Ben Hobbs. For starters, it's just good to see him get more minutes in the midfield. When Sartas and Perkins were there, he kind of had to sit back and be that flanker who would, you know, push up to contests. But now that he could get some centre bounce attendances and feature at stoppages, it also meant that Merrett and Gresham could kind of play not the role he was playing, but the filling the space that he was filling. So with them taking the space that he usually occupies, it gave us more creativity through them. So I thought that helped us more as a team. And it also just meant that Hobbs himself could be more involved and more comfortable in that familiar style of play that he likes more. So yeah, we saw him the best he's been all year. He was really involved on ground level. He had some really good moments on ground level compared to the Port players. Some good spins of his body to avoid a tackle. He's actually a really decent ground level footballer, but honestly, like, we just don't see it as much. And it's games like this where, you know, last week I was thinking, is he a part of our future? You know, is there anything there for him? And then he comes in and he has responsibility, you know, given to him, and he actually performs. So that's good to see. It makes you second think his future with us in a good way. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's really just from the fact that he's playing in the position he likes. Round 1, he was that primarily a forward. Round 2, he was just nowhere, but so was half the team. Having to push him back into you know, the back half to get his hands on it. Yeah, I feel like it just made him not the back half, sorry, the middle to get his hands on it. Yeah, it was good to see him involved. So I'm giving him a 7. I will say though, I'm just thinking back onto that that out on the full on the far coverage side wing where I just want to bring that up because I don't know how that's possible. I feel like, yeah. Anyway, it was one of those things, you know, where you see a footballer do something that's just so, strange. It was one of those moments where, like, yeah. But that's not anything against Hobbs. Everyone has those moments. Dylan Shiel. He was, Dylan Shiel, that's who we're up to. He was forced to play through the midfield a bit more, which was good, because that is where he plays his best footy. I mean, he was still a bit iffy by foot, a bit like Merrett. But I mean, it was just good to see him actually progress the ball because, you know, he's been playing this role the last 2 weeks where he's the one that needs to be, you know, bringing the ball forward out of the back half. We move him into the midfield more and he kind of, you know, has that freedom off half back anyway in a weird way because there were a few times where he broke the lines from our, you know, back 50 and moved the ball forward into our own 50 through his own disposal, you know, things like that. He was getting plenty of inside 50s and plenty of the ball in the back half. So I think that's kind of close to what we want to see. Not like that style of game, but the way he played it and the way he moved the ball forward. You can see why the back half experiment was there, but I don't know, he just doesn't look comfortable in it, and I thought against Port he looked really comfortable back in his old position. It was the best he's looked. He gets a 7. I think over 700 metres gained. That is pretty crazy, because in the first 2 weeks he didn't combine for that, or I reckon close to it. Isaac Kako, I mean, again, every week he's involved, which is perfect. We you know, I thought there was going to be some really low games by this stage. I'm thinking, you know, like, it even happens with Nic Watson. Like, these are guys that are obviously going to be great players, but, you know, they're going to have inconsistent patches. So far, we haven't seen that with Kako, which is great, and we've seen what he's like at his base level when he's not horrible. This is what it is, where he, has that pressure on the game, the feel around him is there, but also just the 10 touches, but 2 direct goal assists at the end, 6 score involvements. He was genuinely important in that last quarter. So when he's not playing at his best, he's actually, still having a say on the game, which is good. I do think at some stage we're going to see a dip in form. It just happens with young forwards. But I think the way I see it, that's what happens at this age. In a year or two, we're going to see less of that. And I think when he's at his worst, it's going to be like this, the 6 out of 10s. And I think that's really promising because, he didn't look as in the game as he looked at his best. You could tell he was a bit behind, but he was still doing good things. And I know that last quarter was just, it was great. And seeing him link up with Caddy, oh my God, don't get me started on that. That was fantastic. That was great to see. And what the great thing is? We're going to see more of it. That is what I love, That's like the first one we've seen, where we're going to have a few really fun months of them, I reckon, linking up. Jade Gresham, is it the best game he's played for us? Or I've seen that going around. I think he was really good early last year too. We all knew he was capable of this from some of his early form in 2024. So it's not surprising, but it's good to see this, especially after a really solid performance in round 1 where he came on as a sub. Take away the Crows game, you'd say he's having actually a pretty good impact on the team. So this is good. Yeah, I actually thought he was one of our best on ground. I gave him 2 votes. And for me, it was the fact that he was the one setting the tone. There was that early tackle, I think it was actually on Rosie. In my video, I said Jason Horne-Francis, but it was on Rosie, where he just, it was a big tackle to be laying in the first minute, and that, you just felt that in the crowd. He actually led us for tackles for the game, 7, most on the field, 11 score involvements as well. It was really good. I love the way that he and Merrett both tag team that high half forward flanker role. Both kind of drifted into the back of stoppages from the forward line, and they were just both so creative and damaging when they had the footy. Well, Merrett less so. That's the thing actually. I think Gresham of the 2 was the one having more of an impact with ball, and that is not something you say much. I thought he was great. I'm giving him an 8 out of 10. That is, it's definitely one of the best games he's played for us. So hopefully we see more of that, because that could be really exciting, the way he links up with Merrett. And there's definitely something there. So yeah, that's cool. Jordan Ridley, first game back from injury, or not injury, but concussion. The Port forward line was shut down pretty well in the last 3 quarters. Ridley didn't really himself have like a threat to contain. He did get swapped to Georgiades for a few contests, but really struggled, and it was then Reid who took over, and Ridley was more free. And I think Ridley didn't really seem to be defending that much. That's not like a negative. I feel like Ridley's involvement in the game was purely off the back of the way he was moving the footy. There were a few really good intercept marks. There was that one-handed one on the far side wing. There was another really good intercept as well, but he only had, I think, 2 or 3 for the game. 3 for the game. I've got it in my notes here. So yeah, that's well below his numbers. But that wasn't really an issue because he was just so trustworthy with the footy. And the good thing, he's a key defender you want to be touching the ball 20 to 25 times a game. Because, there's a number of different ways this guy can have an impact. He can intercept, he can shut down, and he can do this. And I think, the intercepting wasn't really there. He was defending well when the ball was around him, but he didn't have to do too much defensively. I'm giving him a 6. Definitely elements of his game that, weren't top-notch or tested, but I think what he did was definitely beneficial. But, I mean, he can do much more than he's currently doing. But I'm not saying that as if it's an issue. I'm saying that he didn't need to be. Hopefully, though, we see some vintage Ridley. That Dreamtime game last year, that was just... Oh, man, that was something to behold. That's one of the best games I've seen anyone play live, actually. I like the way he moved around the ground was yeah. Because I hadn't gone to... And you guys know he's my man crush, but I hadn't actually seen too much of him live before Dreamtime. I've seen lots of him, watching Essendon, but it would always work out that he was injured when I was in Melbourne coming to watch. Or there was that one in Adelaide where Willie Rioli hit him off the ball like early on and he ended up, being subbed out. Yeah, so that was the first time I'd actually watched Ridley in a long, long time. And yeah, it was just, you realise how good he is watching him at the ground. He's one of those players when he's at his very best. And that vibe wasn't really there as much. But that's okay. He will get there. Archie Roberts, this guy. Oh boy, this is like the unsung hero of sorts out of the night, because there's all this talk about Saad El-Hawli, and I mean this from the media and online, not from Essendon. We all know, but there's this Saad El-Hawli talk. There's the fact that Essendon are up and about again. There's a few narratives to this game. And you feel like if this was just a regular, run-of-the-mill match, more people would be talking about Archie Roberts and how good he was. And I mean, panel on shows vibes, not online, because Essendon, we know he was really good. It was, and it's the fact that he looks so comfortable this early on, like not even comfortable, but like, I don't know. He just looks up to it. You watch him play, and you just know that he's going to be consistently giving his all, and I love that. He's still a bit skinny. He's got room to grow, which is great because he still goes in so hard. He's a really tough player, and when he has the ball, he doesn't really play like that. He's that silky, attractive player, but then he has this tough side to him. It's just great. I think he's really going to be a player for us. He was that's his best game for the club. I thought he was awesome, and it was the fact he was so rounded on that wing. He had the 10 score involvements, 5 intercept possessions, 21 touches. This guy hasn't even played 10 games for the club yet, and he's already, amongst our 5 or 6 best players in a game. And that's legit. I think he would be. He'd be up there. So yeah, I'm giving him an 8. I thought he was really, really good. That's almost the most pleasing thing out of the game for me is Archie Roberts, because we're going to see more of it. So yeah, that's awesome. Speaking of awesome, Sam Durham. Yeah, he was my best on ground. It was just a brutal performance. Port, a tough team, but they look scared of us in the contest a bit. And I feel like this guy was the reason in the midfield. He was bashing and crashing as always. He was going in with force. He wasn't just winning the footy, but he was ripping it out and owning it. I thought he was quiet to start round 1 and 2. Not quiet, but there was talk of him being that all-Australian type player early, mostly just like the media and Kane Corns trying to hype it up. But that performance was elite. He was best on ground. I gave him 3 votes, 28 touches, 14 contested possessions, 5 clearances, led the ground for score involvements with 12, which is wild considering the way he was playing and the style. So he wasn't just tough in the contest, but he was genuinely making things happen when he got the pill. That is great to see. The only thing was he was a bit wayward in front of goal. He had 2, I'm going to say relatively straightforward chances. Like one was from distance, I think, but the fact he missed both out on the full, or one, 0 behind, so both of them were out on the full. If he'd kicked one of those goals, we're probably in 9 territory because he's hitting the scoreboard too. But no, an 8 is, take nothing away from he was our best. I can't really give any one player a 9 because I was tossing up between having a few different players get the 3 votes. I've in my comments in the review, I've seen so many different people give out 3 votes to so many different players, so that's really cool. And that, because I was struggling to do the votes, and then I see you guys struggle to all have the same, and it's like, that's why I was struggling, because there were some good players. Onto a not so good player. Oh, you know what? I don't know. It's tough because I was talking about Ridley before and how you notice him around the ground at his best when you're at the ground, and you don't always see it on TV. I feel like Harry Jones is definitely a kind of player who you can appreciate more watching at the ground. You can kind of see what he does and the work he puts in. Did he top our distance? I'm just going to quickly check on my phone. But yeah, he's what I'm trying to say is he's one of those players that just flies under the radar when you're watching them on TV, but you realise, why there's so much. He didn't top our distance. It was Nic Martin. But, you realise how important he is at the ground. But funnily enough for me, after the game, because I went, I was thinking, maybe a 4. I thought Harry Jones was not really working in that position. But then I was watching on TV and I started noticing things there, which is always strange when you notice it on TV more than at the game. And maybe it's the commentators kind of, pointing you towards it a bit, because that can happen if someone recognises something that you just don't. But yeah, he was popping up more, and I think I'm going to give him a 5. I was fully prepared to give him a 4 watching live, but on replay, you look at, he's far from a liability. He had some nice moments. He didn't really have a say on the game, but I thought he played his role. He made it harder for Port's defence at times, so I'm going to give him, a 5. But also, it is really hard to rate players like the worst. I'm not saying he's the worst, but one of the less impactful players after a win, because these are the type of games where if it was a loss, would we be giving him a lower score? I don't know. We're going to roll with the 5. Nic Martin, I'm trying to think. Is this because we were talking about Archie Roberts and his best game? Is this Nic Martin's best game for the club? Oh, maybe no. There was one against Geelong last year or the year before where I thought he was good, but actually, from memory, I remember us really hyping him up in Cardinia Park the other year. So maybe not the best, but I think this is one of his, one of the games where he felt the most important to the outcome, and that's really cool because he is still really inexperienced. Rucks take time to grow. You don't really usually see them get into their good footy until past 25. So the fact he's actually doing really nice things in a game, and I think it was that last quarter really where because he was doing it for most of the match, he was kind of sitting behind the ball when resting, which we've talked about a few times because he doesn't really hit the scoreboard, so he kind of sits behind the ball and takes up space in the air, but this week it felt like he was doing more than just take space. He was actually a real problem for Port, especially in that last quarter where I think he took 2 or 3 intercept marks, and he actually, by the way, had the equal most intercept possessions for Essendon alongside Ben McKay. So he was actually, doing what we needed him to do back there. He was more than just a presence. I thought he was actually really frustrating for Port, and I thought he was rucking, decently. I thought the battle between him and who's Sweet. I mean, he had the over 20 hitouts, and I think from less contest than Sweet. It was fairly even in the ruck, but I think around the ground, Bryan was having a pretty big say on the game, so I'm going to give him a 7. That is good to see. It's almost drink break time. And by the way, thank you to, what was your name? Oh no, I'm going to try and think of the name. I'm going to save the drink break because the name will come back to me. I've completely blanked. Oh man. Oh damn it. Is the name going to come back to me? I'm so sorry. So I got recommended a triple strength, what is it? Ice break? Real ice, ice break. Because I mentioned Dare last video. So I got recommended that. I had a bit of it before, and it is pretty good. So thank you to, I hope the name comes back to me, because I made it an effort to remember it in my head when I was buying it in the shops, but I've completely forgotten now. I'm so sorry. But if you guys have any drink break suggestions for me, something new to try, leave them in the comments. Jaxon Prior. This was early on. You're worried that you have to give him like a 3 or a 4 because he was very shaky to start the game. He picked up where he left off from last week and the week before that. There were 2 different occasions where he went for the fist instead of marking it, and he could have, and you can tell that's just a lack of confidence. And one of those led to a pretty disastrous goal where that fist went nowhere, and it was pretty grim to watch. That was bad. But let's give him some credit. The way that he responded was actually impressive, and I'm not saying this because I'm a fan of his. I thought he was, I was fully prepared to give him that 3 or 4 again. But he's on 7 touches at halftime. He's making mistakes defensively. He comes out after the break, and we see him actually look really comfortable for the first time in an Essendon jumper. I thought the third in particular, he was genuinely one of our best players on the field, and that's I feel like that's a fair enough statement. He had the 9 disposals, going at 89% by foot, 3 intercepts. I was sitting back and thinking that that is what we would get when we picked him up, and it's good to actually see that because I thought he was really good after the break, and now we just have to hope that that we see more of that, and then he remains at this level and continues to impress because, yeah, we've seen what he can be. He can be a really solid defender, hard to get past, good by foot, but also we've seen the opposite where, it's bad. So we just have to hope that this is a confidence building game, or that half is, because, yeah, it's now a game that he can think back on now after a few mistakes and remember that he actually is cut out for it. So, yeah, there were mistakes early. Port were getting into him. You could tell that he was in his own head too. There's nothing you can really do to get out of your own head, but he just has to, he has nothing positive to fall back on before that as well because he hadn't played good footy. But now, if that was to happen again, if he makes a mistake early in another match, he's got, good form to fall back on and to think about at a break. So I'm going to give him a 6. I think that was a really important game for him and his morale and his place in the team. So yeah, we've seen what he can do. Let's just hope we see more of that. Mason Redman. This is exactly what speaking of, seeing, this is what we needed to see. That was vintage, 2023 Redman. He was awesome. One of our best. I really wanted to give him votes, and I was hoping that you guys would get him over the line. But unfortunately he won't. He was probably our 4th or 5th best. But he was good. And yeah, 22 touches, 19 of which are kicks. So he's trusting in his legs so much. And 570 metres gained, so he's progressing the ball. He's going forward with it and doing things, but also 90% by foot. That is a perfect combo. That shows that he's trying things and succeeding. So his disposals, they felt good. If you were to ask me how Redman plays at his best, I'd point at that. I think that is what got him in the All-Australian squad. That is the best role for Redman. Just good, solid defending and good drive from the back half. Is this us trusting less in Shiel and getting the ball in his hands more? Is that why? Yeah, I don't know. But either way, I think it's not even really a surprise because he's actually had a good year. He's been one of our more consistent players. I thought he's played different roles, so it's frustrating to not see him play like this in round, this Port game. But I thought he shut down Will Daywell. I thought it was a tough game on Walker, but I thought he actually held his own. It was a big mismatch. This is the first time we've seen him be that, damaging player that can really, tear apart a game. But we have seen him play good role-playing footy before this. So I actually think he's probably been, one of our more consistent players for the year. It's just good to see him hit his best footy. He gets an 8. I'd love to see more of that because it was really exciting. Also, the goal, we haven't seen many Redman goals in a while, and he whips out the celebration and gets his head taken off by Jade Gresham. That was brutal. When do you talk to a player about over celebrating? When do you the coach needs to sit him down and say, look, Jade, we love the enthusiasm, but you're injuring our players. Damn, that's good. That ice break. All right, and speaking of good, Xavier Duursma. Okay, now I want to hear. Okay, I want to talk about this. So, and this might be biased because Essendon and I really like Duursma, but I'm trying to figure out if I should say it or not. I'm going to say it. I'm going to go out with it. I think Xavier Duursma is close to a top 5 or 6 winger in the comp, or he can, be a top 5 or 6 winger in the comp, or at his best he is maybe. I don't know. I just think based on this year, Gordon's not playing. Josh Day, I think he's playing midfield minutes anyway. He's had a better year than Massimo. You think of the best wingers in the comp, I'd say people that are widely perceived as to be the best wingers. I think he's having better years than quite a few. I think that was a really good game. You just love to see it. And it's not that, because Massimo's such a good ball user, Gordon's such a good ball user. I think Duursma's just that reliable, good winger. He works so hard both ways. 29 touches, so a lot, and almost a perfect 50-50 split in offensive and defensive half, when talking about where he got the footy. So he was absolutely everywhere. He had 6 touches deep in D50, so And he picked up so much of the footy on that near side wing too. He was doing real damage on that wing. You felt like that side of the ground at times we owned, and I think a big reason for that at stages, it was one was Caldwell and the other one was Duursma. I thought he was just fantastic. 10 score involvements. It really doesn't get much better than that for a wing game. It gets flashier and it gets more attention. There are players that can definitely play better than that. Some of the games Goulden had on that wing were just unreal. But this is just a solid great game of footy. It's really good to have him actually fit and playing, because I feel like we knew this would happen. People didn't talk about Duursma when they talked about the trades that year. No one really brought up Duursma. I actually saw quite a few people say that Duursma had a poor season for the club last year, and you feel Essendon fans know what he can do, and that's that. And it's not even the first time he's done it this year. He was great against Hawthorn in round 1, so he's looking great. He's in really good touch, and I think the buy's going to come at a good time too, because he's been working pretty hard. Jye Menzie, I thought he was good, and his stats don't look great, but everything he touched turned to gold. So 10 disposals, 8 score involvements. That is pretty epic. And also his work ethic to get back and lend a hand in defence. No one averaged a better speed by foot when defending than Menzie. So his work rate, it needs to be talked about a bit more, because he is one of the whipping boys. But I feel like he does give us proper effort. You never really say that Menzie was lazy. He's certainly behind it sometimes, and out of the game, but I feel like he's never lazy. And he was also one of our younger players. He's younger than Edwards and El-Hawli, I'm fairly sure, and guys that we consider young because they're fresh. I still think Menzie's got a lot to offer. Games like this prove that. He wasn't great. I'm going to give him a 6, but 8 involvements in a game like that, you could argue a 7. I'm not going to. I'm going to give him a 6, but yeah, I thought he was good. I can understand if you want to give him the 7. Nate Caddy, I really liked his game. How good is it to have, talking about players like this after last week? Just what a perfect response. There was some, and I saw on Twitter, some clowns going around getting angry that we drafted him and saying that we should have taken Connor O'Sullivan. They look bloody silly now, because, if you need proof that this guy's going to be a player, you don't. I feel like we just know that he's going to be a good player. At the very least good. But this game is proof of what you can come to expect from Caddy. It was such a great second-year key forward game. He was proving a handful for their defenders, Alir and Co. Kicked 2 goals, probably should have had 3 or 4. I loved his energy, the way he got stuck into them after kicking his second. That's not something you usually see from a player this young, but you can tell he lives off that, and it was great to see. His work on ground level, by the way, that's what stood out to me. This is a really good marking target because, it's great to see him have 2, in round 1 he had 4 contested marks. He was playing that really good aerial key forward game. This week, I don't even know if he had a contested mark, maybe 1, but he has more ground ball gets than all but 2 Port players. That is, for someone who was taking 4 contested marks, the other week and now doing this, yeah, you're seeing how his game can be moulded and how he can be such a dangerous player. Because imagine if he's doing both that at the same time. That is, it is scary to think about if you're a defender. He's going to be a really good player. You can just tell, or he's going to, if we develop him right, he'll be a good player. Yeah, the attributes are there. I'm giving him a 7. Yeah. Just good to see Nate after last week too, and also how good was after the game the way he and Nic Rewalt interacted. I thought that was awesome. That just felt like it felt so genuine. Like sometimes maybe you could think if someone did that, maybe they'd try and do it up for the camera, but the way he was he asked him, he almost looked nervous, like asking a teacher something. It was good vibes, just always trying to learn and improve, and that's great. That is perfect. Zach Reid, this is great. Yeah, he was horrendous last week, Zach Reid. He was really bad. He would know that. It's not, I can say that now after this week, but yeah, after what he dished up last week against the Crows, to seeing this, because he was so important against Port Adelaide. Again, best game he's played for the club. I think that is exactly what we needed to see, because there were plenty saying that Hayes should come in instead of him, and I wouldn't have batted an eyelid if that happened. And the great thing is, McKay gets tailed up by Georgiades, Ridley gets tailed up by Georgiades. Our senior players are failing. He had 4 or 5 shots in the first quarter alone playing on McKay and Ridley. And then we move Reid over to him, and he's gone. He's shut out of the game. You would think it's the opposite. You would think it's Reid losing the contest and the other two having to pick up the pieces and taking his man, sacrificing their role. But it was Reid doing that. It was such a mature defensive performance. And the fact that, our senior players failed him early and he was the one that stood up, yeah, that was great. I gave him the role player vote in my review. Because just the way he was throwing his body around too. And look, it did scare me, seeing him run. I don't like it. I want him in glad wrap, but it's good to see him confident in his body. I feel like that's the first time in the AFL at least that we've seen him look like, confident in his body. So I'm giving him a 7 out of 10. Onto his partner, Ben McKay. The Bronx cheer generator. And again, there's still so much chatter about that, but what is good is two things. One is the fact that the media are picking up on it. So it's being talked about, on TV, so people can realise that they're flogs for doing it. And that's all right, everyone makes mistakes. If you did it, you just realise that it's not the right thing to do and stop. That's all that really needs to happen. But there was also a comment from Mark. So thank you, Mark. But he was saying that that us fans are a extension of the team, and I really like that, because you feel like in a game, would Essendon have won that game if the crowd wasn't there, if this was in COVID times? Maybe not. I mean, the crowd was actually playing a big part in that. You could see it. How often do players celebrate, trying to lift the crowd? Like, I think Martin was literally doing that, trying to, or maybe it was Draper, like lifting the crowd, like get up and about. That's what they try and do. That's how they play better. So for the crowd to be bagging our own players instead of supporting them, you're actively not helping the team. And I really like that comment. The fans are an extension of the team. We are. We might not, do much individually. I'm not going to say I play for Essendon, but altogether, we do a lot. So yeah, don't be a prick. All right, McKay's game, it did start badly. He lost that one-on-one in the first few minutes against Georgiades. He really had the upper hand early. But as the game went along, he was clearly more comfortable. He led us for intercepts, so he was playing, I think, probably the role that Ridley or Reid were gonna play with McKay on Georgiades. But he was having to intercept, and it's good to see him intercept because he hadn't been doing it much to start the year. Honestly, he was just solid. I thought he was very poor early. He had quite a few bad moments. But after that, first quarter, he didn't lose a one-on-one for the rest of the game. He was a major part of the defense that kept them to 60 points. I feel like you've got to give him a pass, but the smallest of passes. I think without him there, that defense looks, you can actually say that it would look poorer. And that's probably the first time we've said that all year, which is not good. But yeah, at least he's looking more comfortable as the game goes along. I'm giving him a 5. He can clearly be much more better. That's me giving him a 5 because I know, he's a much better player than that. And we saw it plenty of times early in the season last year. Nic Martin, still not quite getting close to his best yet. You would still want him getting the ball further up the field, just a tiny bit more. You want that aggressive ball use where it really matters. And I think even just a good 20 to 30 metres higher than what he was, kind of averaging. Because, he still just had the 4 inside 50s, the 5 involvements. You want those numbers to be bumped up by 2 or 3 a game. You want him the one, just like creating around and creating more than he currently is. The good thing is it didn't matter. We didn't miss his creativity. So the team won, and he can. I think the other good thing is there's clearly such a gap from where he is now to where he is at his best. Like, he's not playing badly at all. Like, I thought he was good. I'll give him a 6, but he is actually a star at his very best. I think he's our second most impactful player after Merrett. At his best. So I'm giving a 6 out of 10, but I think we can see a lot more than that. Here's a fun one. Yes, Saad El-Hawli. That was just great. And debuts are always good, but that when there's a debut that you just like yeah, you can tell that people are going to remember that one a bit more. That play was just awesome. It got us all up and about. If the crowd was, because the crowd was pretty quiet for the first few quarters. It was a really average game of footy. Let's be real. It was it looked like it was two bad teams playing against each other. But the way Saad, kind of single-handedly got the crowd up and about. Even just seeing him run on, take the vest off and be in that number 41, you felt like a buzz, and it was really cool to see that play because it went from a buzz to genuine enjoyment and excitement. I think it was probably one of the best sub performances I've seen at the club. There's probably a few that are around that level, but it was real. That's exactly what you want as the sub, and you can say. Would we have won if Saad wasn't the sub? And maybe, but I mean, there's a world where we don't, because it just the way he lifted everyone around him, and the players said it. I think even Archie Roberts was saying that it was inspiring the way he came on and lifted. I thought it was a really, really, good performance, and I think we're going to see a lot of him this year, and you can tell he's going to be a fan favourite too, which is awesome. I'm giving him an 8 out of 10. And also, you don't want to bring it back to, if it changes the game or not. Not trying to be a dick. Oh, gee, I'm running out of time. But, just the way that our sub, they were kind of linking stories with Tom Cochrane and Saad El-Hawli. The similarities there and everything. But it was ours that, lived up to the moment. And that's what, there was narrative there, is what I'm trying to say. Rounding out the players with Tom Edwards, I'm going to give him a 4. He was just not really having that good a night. Luckily, it didn't matter too much. He didn't need to be having a good night. And we've seen him at his best anyway. He kicked 3 goals last week, so I'm not bothered by this at all. But yeah, I mean, he had a few disposals, most of them really shaky. He had that chest mark that got spoiled, which he should have taken in the hands and turned into a goal. 4 turnovers, so yeah, I mean, I can't really give him a good score, but I'm not too bothered because he kicked 3 goals on debut last week, so we're still going to see quite a lot of him. Finally, our coach Brad Scott, I gave him a 2 last week. This week, I'm going to give him an 8. So for starters, he trusted in the young players. He could have swapped out Hobbs for Setterfield or Reid for Laverty or something. He could have gone with older players, but he didn't. He trusted in Reid. He trusted in Hobbs, in so many different players, and they all came good. And then you have the way the game played out. He trusted in our contest footy to get the upper hand and allowed to have that extra number in defence, which limited our transition, but also killed theirs too. It made it harder for them to score, made it easier for us to defend. But he trusted that we had the territory battle won, so he allowed that to happen. And then the individual moves, like Shiel being thrown into the midfield more, Reid onto Georgiades after the 2 senior players failed that. Durham on Rosie and destroying him. I think if we're going to criticise Scott for what he dished up last week, you've got to really praise him for what he did this week. I don't rate Port heaps, but the way we responded as a young team and stood up to the pressure and got the win, it felt like a important win. Yeah, big reason for that is our coach, so I'm giving him an 8. I thought he was just as good as the best players. But yeah, that is that. Cheers for watching, guys. Longer video today, sorry. So thank you if you stuck around. There was plenty of yapping. Remember to go leave your votes in my match review if you haven't yet. I think it's pretty close in a few different areas, and I'll probably tally those up later because we don't have a preview this week because there's a bloody bye. I will also put out a video talking about some father-son and NGA kids soon because there's a few in this draft class that I think will probably be considered to be with Essendon. There's one in particular who, there's honestly maybe 2 in particular that could really be on an AFL list. So there's plenty to watch out for this week, even though there is a bye. But yeah, that is that. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and as always, go Bombers.